5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Who are
5.
we missing?
John
Oh,
Eaton.
John Eaton.
John's.
There's Dougie.
Hey, start without him. Let's go, Joanne. Tell him.
Hey,
Gotta be-
Dougie.
He didn't get the drawing for the car. He's gone. Too bad.
Up to you, folks.
Oh, there he is. Oh, that's not him. That's Jessica.
Hi.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started? It's been a long day.
Yes, it is.
So, CNET, are you ready? Was
think
that a
there's-
yes?
I think it's
Yes. We are
Okay.
ready.
Okay.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone. The February 1st Bellefonte Borough Council meeting for 2021 is called to order. The agenda showed a work session this evening, but we canceled that due to the storm and our consultants who could not participate. So the first order of business is Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I
Pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag
flag
of the United States of America and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which
For
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
Under God.
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty,
and justice
and
for
and
all.
justice for all.
Maybe I should get the gavel from the Borough Building.
Yeah, sorry about
Get a hammer from the basement.
Yeah, hammer would work.
Yeah. Roll call, please.
Ms. Thompson,
Here.
Mr. Eaton is still not here, but expected. Ms. Homboski,
Present.
Mr. Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Prendergast,
Here.
Ms. Tosti Vasey,
I'm here.
Ms. Walker,
I'm here.
Mr. Brackhill,
Present.
Ms. Cleaton,
She was with us.
She's here.
He's right there.
Oh,
I
there
see
she
her.
is.
okay, we got you, and Mayor Wilson.
Present.
So our first order of business is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion and a second?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of January 19th, 2021, Brack Bill.
I'll second.
Walker. Any changes? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. Consent agenda. Motion to accept.
I'll make a motion.
Thompson
Prendergast.
and Prendergast, seconds. Any, so all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. Okay, on our regular agenda, we switched the written communications and the oral because we knew that there were going to be a couple of people that wanted to speak. So is there anybody here, first of all, on the large vehicle or RV parking restrictions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the long-term parking areas. Anybody wants to make a comment? Okay, seeing
Right.
none. And any other local, any other oral comments? Okay, then we'll move on to written communications. Ralph?
Sure, we did get some written communications regarding the large vehicle parking restrictions that are fairly new. And I can just sort of summarize two of the letters. Mr. Spicer from Beaver Street voiced some concerns about storing these vehicles on property. No issue with the restriction of being on the road. And then Mr. Miller on Center Street voiced a similar concern. He even provided letters from his neighbors that did not object to him having an RV, in the side yard or front yard of his property. Those are what I've received to date. We did expect a few phone calls. I know Mr. Holderman, who couldn't be here this evening, did give out the link to the meeting. So either they're having trouble joining or we'll hear from them later. But we did receive a number of calls saying primarily on the property was an issue. Most people, from my understanding, had no issue with restrictions on the street.
Any questions on that part?
No,
Okay.
just one. What they don't want to park it on their property? Is that
No,
the
they-
issue?
They don't want us to force them to move it out of the front yard setback. Some properties that we heard from property owners, they have no other place to put it, or they created a space in the front yard, at least approaches into the front yard. Maybe the space has been there for years, or they have no rear yard, or the rear yard drops off and there's concern. So our ordinance calls for no RV, no large vehicle in the front yard setback, as well as on the street, unless it has a permit.
There is provision for getting an exemption, isn't there?
Not, there's like an overnight type of thing. Like if you have a guest come in.
Or a
But-
variance?
Yeah.
Could they apply for a variance?
So, Deb,
Yeah,
the streets committee, when we get to the streets committee, we have a lot more information.
we have something on
Let's
streets
hold off the-
for that.
let's hold off the discussion till streets.
Sure. Okay. So that's a summary of comments regarding the large vehicle RV regulations.
Okay.
I can speak a little bit to the red meter or new signage area as well. We also had, a number of calls and concerns voiced that, although the intent was good with not having meters, not all scenarios were taken into consideration, such as a guest that comes in for a day, doesn't have a permit. The red meters requires a permit if you're there for more than an hour. When the red meters are there, of course, somebody could feed the red meter all day long if they wanted to. I think they're looking for an adjustment or an amendment to the regulations. Primarily, that if I was to summarize the concerns, it was about that short term, needs to be addressed, needs to be considered in the regulations. More than an hour, but less than a day, or a day or so, less than a week. Someone stopping in for a few hours to visit or whatever, we have to accommodate those folks as well.
Would it be possible to issue temporary permits?
Could we either
Well,
move this to streets or talk to about it now? I think Ms.
It's
Centric.
already, Mandy, it's already on the streets. Deb will discuss that when we get
Yeah.
there. He was just summarizing the letters we
Yes.
received.
Okay, but I just don't want to get into a bunch of discussion that's going to take place under streets again.
Yeah.
Great. So that's a summary of the two issues.
Moving on to the written communications that we have listed.
First one is from Keystone Historic Preservation, or the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission. They're notifying us that there's a grant round or opportunity coming up, grant applications for either preservation or construction or planning type of projects could be applied for, and it's matching funds, $1 for $1. What I mean by that is we have to match locally $1 for any grant funds that we would receive, and the applications are due by March 1st.
Could we send this announcement on to BHI, HBI, DBI, and BHCA, since they are the nonprofits that might be interested in this?
Sure.
Okay. And it's also under new business down at the end of the agenda, just FYI.
Okay, please. So that's what we'll do. Next item is Bellefonte Area Middle Schools is interested in having a spring performance over in the new area of Talleyrand Park. They're looking at around May 15th. They're looking, being a school, they're looking at getting a waiver and also getting permission to do the event.
I'd like to refer this to Parks and Rec for review and recommendations.
Okay.
I am the advisor of the middle school drama club, and so I was here to answer any questions that you might have about what we're thinking. I am really excited about the opportunity to possibly have the kids perform out in the community, and in thinking about a safe way to do this with the COVID regulations and everything, being able to do it in an outside environment where a live audience could be socially distanced, as well as the kids could be spread out in a safe outside area. I was really excited about the possibility of doing this at Talleyrand.
Okay. Would you be able, Jessica, to attend a Parks and Rec meeting so we can go into more detail about what kind of mitigation and planning needs to happen, and which we have
Yes.
done with the other groups that have asked for similar types of programming?
Sure.
So what we'll have Ralph do is put out a doodle to you and the committee members to set up a time that's mutually convenient for all of us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica.
Randy?
Madam President, I was wondering, would it be appropriate to go ahead and approve the date on condition of having this meeting and having things spelled out the way the way we've done it in the past? And at least that way that confirms the date for them. We
Why don't you
won't
just-
lose it.
Randy, go ahead and make the motion. I'll second it.
So I'll make the motion to approve the date of May 15th, 2021,
Or 16th.
or 16th as a rain date for the Bellefonte Middle School spring performance in Talleyrand Park and the figure 8 side.
I will second that motion. Johnson?
Okay, so that was Brackbill and Johnson. And so what'll happen, just FYI, is if we pass this, then you've got the dates. We'll come back, we'll do all the other stuff, and then this will come back to council again for the final approval.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any
Thank you.
discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? Say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved.
All righty, next item is from a Nancy Cohn, Child Evangelism Fellowship Field Missionary. They're interested in renting 2 pavilions out in Governor's Park the week of August 2nd through the 6th. And the big thing is obviously they're looking for approval. They claim in the letter they'll follow all the CDC guidelines, but they're also asking for a discount in the fee because they're a nonprofit.
I would also want to refer this to Parks and Rec for review. FYI, they don't qualify for the waiver because they are an out-of-town nonprofit. They are not a Bellefonte-based nonprofit.
There again, if you choose, I'll make the motion to approve the pavilion rental for August 2nd to the 6th. For Nancy Cohn, the CEF Field Missionary.
I'll second Brackbill.
Date only.
And that goes under the same guidelines, Joanne, that you suggested for the previous
Right.
motion.
Right. Any discussion?
Is
All-
this the first time they've requested or they've been?
No, they were here last year and they requested the same sort of thing, and we denied them the fee waivers last year as well.
All right.
Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
aye. All opposed? So moved.
You.
Okay.
There's also a letter that's not on your agenda from the Bellefonte Moose. Previously, council approved them holding a rubber duck derby type of thing from basically the big spring out to Lamb Street Bridge. And apparently there was a date was undetermined, or for whatever reason, they were to come back with a date. So they have in their letter for September 4th, 2021 as the date that they would like to reserve. Again, I think they're looking at reserving the date and understanding that there could be conditions.
So same thing as the previous two.
Yeah, I'll make
Oh,
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Prendergast and Johnson to move for the September 4th date with them to come to Parks and Rec for final approval after their recommendations. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? So moved.
I believe that's all I have under written communication.
Nope, there's one more.
I'm
There,
sorry.
this came in through the police department this morning. Margaret Price, it wants to reserve the entire west parking lot for all day Friday, May 28th for a wedding party in Talleyrand Park. And what I'd like to do is refer this to Building and Property for review and recommendation.
Yes.
You want to approve the date tentatively, Joanne?
Uh,
No? Okay,
No, because if we can't give them the thing, it's,
okay,
there's a lot of issues with that
Okay.
particular request. So I'd rather
Okay.
hold off.
okay.
Which lot was it, Joanne?
The west lot, it's the one near
Okay.
CVS.
Right, CVS.
What was,
So
the,
we-
propo-
we'll need
what
a-
was the proposed date on that, Jane?
Friday, May 28th.
And that, just a question. So that I think one of the issues is probably going to be the permitted parking.
Yes.
It's the
Okay.
permit
Yeah.
parking. It's
Yeah.
permanent designated parking for the businesses that's down there. It's the electric vehicle parking, and it's trying to figure out a whole fee and see how much of all of that we can work together before we can bring it back. So do you want me, so do we have any other questions or discussion? Seeing none. Ralph, can you make a doodle to
Yes.
set up a building and property meeting?
Yes.
Thanks.
Sure.
And we'll try to get this done as quickly as possible because I know if someone's planning a wedding, they would like to have enough advance notice.
Right.
That's the only other written communication I've seen.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, then Mayor, you're on.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to report that at a meeting that was held Tuesday the 26th, it was actually for the chief's evaluation. We came up with a proposal to do a 6-month pilot project. There would be two-pronged events. Would be an advisory board. We're going to put together an advisory board, and we're also going to do community outreach. Now, there were several people here tonight that were at that meeting. If anybody has any further plans and or details that they would like to talk about, please go ahead.
First of all, Sean said he would be willing to have discussions with the finance committee, and when we get to the finance, Gina will talk about that part of it. The people that were designated to start the finance review with the retired police officer, what you were calling a board, would be Jeff Watson, who's a retired police officer, Kurt Bernier, a community member, Sean Ralph as borough manager, Randy Brackbill as chair of the safety committee, myself, and John Eaton from the finance, as a finance committee
And
representative,
myself.
and yourself.
Thank you. I didn't write those names down, so I'm glad. you
Okay,
have them.
and simultaneously, Sean is going to be putting together a public engagement committee that will meet and send out announcements. So he'll probably be bringing at our next meeting his plan design for setting up that first public engagement meeting, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Okay, other than that, that's all I have to report.
What about the overtime, police overtime report?
Well, did you read it? I did. I think it went to everybody. There was a police overtime report.
Went to the finance committee, actually.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions on it?
I read it.
Very good. You have any
Well, just-
questions?
The overtime, the monthly overtime at the end of the month gets in the monthly police report, but I send the finance committee after every pay period.
Great.
So
We appreciate that.
you're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions or for the mayor or the chief of police? Chief Weaver, do you have anything else that you want to report? You're muted. Sean?
No, I'm fine.
Okay,
I had a glitch in my computer here.
okay. Then we'll move on to my report. I have two different meetings that I attended in the last 2 weeks. The first one was the Spring Creek Watershed Commission meeting on January 20th. It was basically a reorganization meeting. I was reelected as chair. Paul Takak of College Township will continue as vice chair. Jim Lanning of Benner Township is the new secretary, and Bill Sharp of College Township is the new treasurer. We're also in the process of hiring a new website coordinator and administrator. The applications have now closed, and the interviews will be scheduled in the next 2 weeks or so. Any questions on the Watershed Commission? Seeing none. The other one was the Drive Electric PA Coalition meeting on January 1st that was also held virtually. There were several things that were discussed, some that were totally related to EVs and others that were more were broader. First speaker was from the Pennsylvania Utilities Commission. He discussed net metering, use of solar power, and the time of use rate metering. Both net metering, which is used with solar power, and time of use metering requires a smart meter. PUC and the utilities are in the process of switching out meters throughout the state to smart meters to allow for both of these new forms of electricity metering, which will affect everybody in the Commonwealth. Currently, if you have a smart meter and your utility offers time of use metering, you can go and voluntarily ask to be switched to this form of metering. I don't know if First Energy has yet set up that option or not, but basically what that allows is that you could do some of your more energy intensive things that you can time to different parts of the day to like the middle of the night when the cost of electricity is lower, so it could actually reduce your cost a bit. So that's in the process right now. The second one is something Doug has been asking about for a while. And it's registration fees and gas tax costs. The Department of General Services and the General Assembly are working on new legislation regarding vehicle registration fees. Because of COVID, the state, including PennDOT, has realized that gas taxes are not sustainable for our road maintenance. So one of the considerations that's being made is that for all EV, electric vehicles, and ICE, internal combustion engine vehicles, is to possibly change the way we remove the gas tax and eventually, and I don't know how long that'll take, and change it to base registration fee based on mileage and weight of all vehicle calculations, so that each vehicle, no matter who you are, would be paying their fair share.
I can see taxes going away.
Yeah, we'll have to see, but that's one of the considerations that's happening. There were a couple of others that were much more complicated. I figured it was easiest just to tell you about the easiest one to understand. The third item was that the Delaware Valley Planning Commission has information on their website on what municipalities need to know for electric vehicle implementation. We could use this as a resource for the transportation section of our greenhouse gas reduction plan. The final issue was that there may be a program for school districts here in Center County to try out an EV school bus. The state is doing a 6-week piloting program in both rural and urban areas to determine the feasibility of using EV school buses around the state. I asked the guy, because we're right in the center of the state, because it's only going to be on the eastern half. What I don't know is if eastern half includes Center County or not. He hasn't gotten back to me yet to say whether Center County qualifies. I've got another phone call into him, so as soon as I have that information, I'll pass it on to you, and if we do qualify, I'll pass it on to the school district as well. And that's the end of my report. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to committee reports. Ann, building and property.
I am not aware of anything to contribute this evening.
Anybody have any questions for Ann? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to finance. Gina?
Okay, we had a meeting on January 26th, and we talked about just a couple of different things, the advisory board that Joanne already spoke about, and some of the things that are on the other issues that are on the, the finance committee agenda. So let me go back to that and jumping around here. One of the things that we discussed, I'd like to make a motion to consider the approval of the increase in the real estate collector compensation. Right now it's $2 a bill, so it would be $2.50 a bill. And this has not been increased since 1985, and that would go into effect in 2022.
Motion.
I will second that motion.
Johnson?
Well, never mind.
Okay, discussion? Questions?
I think it's a good deal. It's a good idea.
I
Right,
think so too. It's been a long time coming.
yeah. We discussed we felt that it was very appropriate, and considering that it hasn't been increased in quite some time, and it was a reasonable amount, so.
I agree. I didn't realize it had been like that for so long.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
And the second issue, I'll have Joanne speak more to this, but it's the Downtown Bellefonte Inc. Memorandum of Understanding update.
Okay. Can we go back just real quickly?
Yeah.
Under the meetings with the finance department, do you want to do that first? So there's Public Works, Police,
Right. Yeah. Yes, but I was still, I believe that there are, I don't have the dates set for those. I know that the police department were going to meet in April. The police department is meeting with the finance department in April, July, and October. And I'm still working out the months for the other departments. And making sure that the departments that need to be included. So we have water and sewer, public works, and then I believe safety as well, or the fire department. Sorry.
Yeah, I had requested adding Chief Lure, and so thank you for doing
Right.
that.
Yep. So I'll get back with the specific dates for those.
Okay. Thank
Put
you.
that on my. Yep.
Okay. So going over to DBI, in 2019, we created a memorandum of understanding with DBI when the position that Shannon used to hold, which was a joint position for zoning, harb, planning, and the Main Street Manager program was split into two separate positions so that DBI had a full-time Main Street Manager. The memorandum of understanding is no longer valid because of the changes that DBI is making to the position. They have eliminated the Main Street Manager position due to the financial impact of COVID. And the new position that they're creating will be a part-time position. So we met this evening with Ellen Mattis, the president, and Mike Scott, who's the vice president of DBI. And we had a good discussion on what their thoughts are, what their plans are, how much time is involved, and all of that. We did not come to a final decision, but we came up with 5 possible options. They understand that the MOU is no longer viable based on what's in the MOU, and they would like to work with us. So they're going back to their board and discuss the possibility of prorating the MOU, no funding from the borough until they put back a full-time manager, holding off on payments until they find if other funds are available, possibly splitting the position with the borough like we had 2 years ago. And finally, they did agree this evening that we will eliminate the first quarter payment of 2021 and hold on any decisions on the MOU until they know what's happening with the DCED, who is also dealing with some issues because they said approximately 60% of the downstreet managers were laid off across the state in the last year because of COVID. So once they know what's happening with that, they'll have some more information and then they'll get back. We asked them to try to get this information to us sooner and later because we have advertised the zoning, harb, and planning commission position as a part-time position. And if it's going to go back to a joint one, we need to know that before we do any hiring. So that's what's happening with that. No decisions, just some more talk to come down the road. Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to make the comment that in place of providing that for the Main Street Manager position, I think Ralph had an appropriate suggestion in using that more on the harb zoning criteria through Bellefonte, and that might help that position that we're trying to fill. Yeah, and that's a part-time position too, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Are you speaking of the resources, Randy? Or I'm not sure.
Well, you had written up something about that money could be used for harb and zoning.
Well, yes, as you know, we're currently looking for, a staff person for planning, zoning, harb, and I think others mentioned, if the agreement was not valid or was breached, we could use those resources. I think Mr. Johnson said it very well when we met with the folks from DBI that our resources are very tight. So yes, we could.
And I was just supporting that comment, that I think that's a good alternative as well, if that hasn't been one of the 5 discussed.
Yeah.
That was that's within the mix. So we won't know until they get back to us what they're willing to do.
Randy, we did make the suggestion and we're waiting for feedback from them.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? Then that's my end of the finance report. Jeannie, do you have anything else?
Let me see here. I do not believe so. Nope, we're good.
Any questions for finance?
I do, real quick. Gina, thanks
Yeah.
for the outline. Your agenda was very well written. I appreciate
Oh,
it. Those
you're
notes were
welcome.
very- No, they were very well done from our meeting. It makes it a
So-
lot easier.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
So
I like to take thorough meeting minutes for our committee.
that's very good. We will be meeting regularly. And what's the meeting times
Yeah.
for the public knows?
They're the second Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. That time is sort of flexible if one of our committee members can't make it, but that's the default time.
Okay.
Joanne, I also thought, I wasn't sure if I should mention, but that I was not part of that meeting that the finance committee had with DBI, if it matters to
Yep.
mention that publicly. You know,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I recused myself from that meeting, so.
Okay. Anything else? Moving
Nope.
on. Moving on. Melissa, Parks and Rec.
We had at least one volunteer for the volunteer snow removal brigade. However, my husband Troy went down to also volunteer without saying he was volunteering. And
Nice guy.
according to him, the waterfront, someone already took care of the waterfront, and I think he worked on Talleyrand Park. So there's at least 1.5 people volunteering in our snow brigade. And if anyone out there would like to voluntarily help remove snow, you can please contact the borough and they will line you up.
Great.
Did a
I have
good
nothing
job. on the
further.
waterfront.
Tell your
He
husband.
said it
thank
looked
you.
great. Yeah, we'll
Troy,
see what
thank
I
you.
haven't heard back from. I haven't heard back from him to see what he did. He just said that he went over to Talleyrand after that. So I don't know who did the waterfront.
So whoever
you
it
to whoever
was,
did.
thank you.
I think Melissa, who's the guy that moved into Doc Corman's house? Ralph?
Yeah. He's going to volunteer. What's his name?
Yeah. I'm
He's
sorry.
not-
It's
he-
escapes me.
escapes my mind as well, but he talked to Dawn
Right,
about volunteering. So.
right.
Well, thank you to whoever is helping out. That is very much appreciated.
Question.
My little dog certainly enjoys it.
So do they have a mix of shovels and snow blowers, or all snow blowers? Because I have a snow blower, but I don't have anything to take it down on. So if I should show up down there, it would be with a shovel at this point.
The waterfront, somebody used a shovel on the side, on the steps and at the top. But it looked like a snow blower on the bottom.
Troy took
I'm
his
pretty
snowblower
sure-
to Talleyrand.
Okay.
Pretty sure it was a snow blower at the waterfront.
Yeah.
I have a
would think.
tractor with a plow, but since there was enough volunteers, I didn't bother to go. It was done by the time I noticed it.
There will be more snow in the AM if anyone would like to go down, I'm sure. There's no absence of snow today.
Thank you, everyone.
Mayor, will you be there?
I would be there. I tell you what, I have half a snow blower, but no way to transport it right now, or I'd get out and just do it. So if anybody wants to talk to Holly and pick up a truck, that would be great.
Anything else for Parks and Rec, Melissa?
I have nothing further, thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Parks? Okay. Moving on then. Human Resources, John?
I'm a little baffled which part of the snow blower the mayor has.
That hasn't been clearly defined yet, John.
Okay,
Obviously.
seriously. I'm going to start, I'm going to reverse the agenda items and talk about our HR meeting on the 28th. And that meeting was our first planning discussions. for the initial offer to our unionized public workers. This will be a process that'll go on for for most of the year, but we're hoping to have put something on the table, have some discussions, and avoid any last minute rushes. But other than that, Ralph is going to provide an update on some vacancies that we've had inside the borough.
Sure. I think you heard me mention a meeting or two ago. We had a position in the water department that we had advertised internally, which is part of our union agreement that we do that. We had a streets person from the streets department apply and take that position. So we are advertising for a streets laborer position within the borough. That advertisement finishes February 12th. So, we'll see once we get those applications in, we'll be setting up interviews. We also had advertised and we're taking applications for the nuisance code officer, the person who issues like weed or snow removal violations. And we're also, as you heard us talk about, a part-time planning, zoning, and harbor administrator. Both those application periods have closed. So I hope to be setting up interviews in the near future to keep that moving. So right now, that's kind of where we're at. Come later this spring, we hope to advertise some additional positions.
How many people applied for the nuisance code officer and the planning zoning harb?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, and Dawn was out of the office today, so I'm not
Okay.
able to answer that.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions for either John or Ralph? Okay, seeing none. Randy, safety.
You're muted, Randy.
I have a lot of audio issues, but I want to thank Mr. Johnson for letting me know. And I found out myself when I watched CNET the other night that I sounded like, I don't know, death warmed over. Wasn't going very well. So I made some corrections to my audio and I think it's working okay now. If everybody can hear me, just give me one of these and we're good. So anyway, I have on my agenda here a Center County Hazard Mitigation Plan update by Ralph. And you're muted.
Basically, Randy, I'm working on the documents you sent me.
Okay.
We're shorthanded, as I've mentioned. So I just have to carve out some time and go through and see what information is missing, put it together and send it over to the county, I believe. But I just wanted to let you know I did receive it and we are working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And then under Fire Executive Committee report, we had a Fire Executive Committee meeting on last Thursday evening, at 28th, I believe was the date. We received a report from Nick Caputo, who's our Safer Grant Manager. We received a report from Deborah Smeal, our Bellefonte Fire Department Medical Officer, on status of firefighter physicals. There has been a grant signed for the MSA Air Packs, or SCBA, for March delivery. I'm sorry, it was signed. MSA was the company we signed with, and it's for the air packs, or what they call CBAs, SCBA. They are working on a social media policy. Chief Lore has some examples that he's looking through, and he's going to discuss it at the Chiefs meeting this month, and then bring it back to the exec committee in March. The Logans also hired a grant writer and are working on an AFG grant to purchase a new apparatus to replace an aging apparatus. There was discussion on this type of grant and that it should be recommended to the borough for approval, as the match would come out of the fire equipment budget. And it was recommended that Dawn Halderman at the borough office be contacted to answer their questions. So I know that the president of the Logan sent an email out. I don't know if it was answered. I didn't answer it myself. Kind of waiting to see if Dawn may take a look at that. And I think, Ralph, you were copied on that as well. But I tried to explain to them that when it comes to a grant like this, it's normally managed by the borough. And we got into another discussion about other grants going for the stations, which is true. But in the purchasing of an apparatus, it always goes through Borough Council. So, and that was pretty much the gist of the meeting. And when those minutes come out, since we had the recorder that night, once they come out, if I could get that in a Word form, then I can add information I need to put on there for the minutes as well.
No problem. We get them from, the person that does the transcriptions, and then we'll forward them over to you.
Okay, thank you. That's my report.
Any questions? Good job, Randy.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else for safety? Questions for him? Okay. None. I don't see any. So, Doug, do your water and sanitation bit.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. Well, I'd like to make a motion for resolution number 02012021-01, a resolution of the Borough of Bellefonte, Center County, Pennsylvania, approving the amendment to the water agreement dated March 19th, 1998, as amended. You all should have had a copy of that resolution in your packet. So I'd like to make a motion to approve that, and then it will go to the authority tomorrow night for approval. And then it will come back to Borough Council after both of us approve the resolution. Ralph, please add something to that.
Sure.
Can we, before he does that, can we have a second and then he can,
I'll second it.
who was that?
Prendergast.
Okay, Johnson and Prendergast. Okay, go ahead, Ralph.
The resolution primarily describes or permits officers of the borough, myself, a secretary or council president, to sign the agreement as amended, and then the amendments are attached as you saw. The authority has a separate resolution doing the exact same thing with their officers. So once these resolutions are approved, we let the attorneys know that are helping us through the process, and we get a signature copy of the agreement. We sign everything, and it'll be circulated. We'll eventually get the completely signed copy. But I don't really, other than, once I get that completely signed copy, that's what I intend to bring back. You probably won't see much until we get that final copy back, and then I'm happy to give you a copy for your records.
We talked about this in the finance committee meeting, and the only question I had, and I think this is more of a legal issue, is I want to make it clear that in the resolution, there's a section that says, for example, and it gives a statement that says that how the cost increases will be done on an annual basis, and then the next sentence says that if the value goes down from the CEPEI, which is a consumer price index thing, and Doug can give you a little bit more information on that, then our cost on an annual basis will not go down. The only question I had was the ordering of those sentences. Ralph said that if we were to change this, it would cost us another several $1,000s. So I just wanted to have it placed on the record that with us agreeing to this, that it is our understanding clearly that that third sentence in that paragraph does not relate to an example. It relates to the entire contract. Does that make sense, Ralph? You're looking a little.
Well, I'm listening. the best way I can answer that, Joanne, is, the authority members have looked over this. They'll look over it again tomorrow night. Our borough solicitor, Mr. Stover, reviewed the agreement. He did find a couple items. That is what led to the delay. I just know, working with the authority solicitor and the borough solicitor, it's a very expensive and time-consuming process. I would say, no disrespect, I would say the comment is taken, but I would not spend the money to go through and have it resolved or clarified.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes.
I'm just saying that I'm putting that on the record so that we all understand that that last sentence doesn't relate to the example. It relates to the entire contract.
Yep. And I think that's certainly within your purview. I would just add, there, just like any agreement, there is dispute resolution language, because who knows, 5-10 years down the road, there's something either they don't agree with or we don't agree with. There's resolution language and how to resolve that in there. We think it's, that part's even been cleaned up a little bit. So it's there if it's needed. Hopefully there aren't any disputes and we all work well together.
Any questions or if any further comments? Doug, do you want to explain the CEP?
Do you want any explanation for that?
Yeah, I just so the public understands what that is.
Well, without getting too deep into it, we're approving it, but we're basing the cost increase yearly based on the PCEPI, not the PCI. And I'll tell you what those two are as best that I know. And John Eaton can help me out if I get into trouble. PCEPI is what the Federal Reserve uses for prime rate. This is the rate that banks lend money to one another. And PCEPI means Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index. Okay? A lot of times people will use CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. We're not using that one. We're using what we have decided as the authority, a better rate, a way to figure that rate out or that increase. So those are the differences of the two. We're using the PCEPI. Okay?
And
Go ahead,
Doug,
John.
that was a recommendation that was made to you by your financial advisor, the financial person on the water authority. And it's from a banker's perspective, it is what they use to judge inflation for the banking industry. So it's a very valid it's a valid measure. It's just not what we typically hear on the evening news.
That's correct.
Which is the CPI. So
that is correct.
We're I think everything's fine with the agreement. They just use a different acronym than we usually were expecting, but I think it's good.
Any other questions or comments?
Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Anything
you.
else, Doug?
Yes, I've got about 15 items here, Joanne. Center County Recycling Center at 253 Transfer Road. They're going to try to resurrect this year the household hazardous waste collection event, and it's now scheduled for April 30th and May 1st. If you want to just put that on your calendar. Let's see, what else do I have here? I thought I had something else. No, I guess I don't. That's it.
Okay.
Oh,
Any
well,
questions?
we have an authority meeting tomorrow night, and we're hoping, well, the hope is that I'm fairly confident we'll approve the resolution that we just approved here with council and get that moving along. Am I missing anything, Ralph?
I think where you covered it.
Any questions for Doug? Seeing none?
Guys did a great job removing the snow today. So
Thank you.
a lot of work.
Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next topic, streets. Deb, you've got a long report tonight.
Okay. First up is the large vehicle and RV parking restrictions. We've had quite a bit of feedback from the community, particularly property owners who have large vehicles parked on their property. And we understand their concerns that it might not be fair to ask them at this point to move them. And what I'd like to do is make a motion to hold further action on large vehicle and RV parking restrictions as pertains to vehicles parked on owner's property, pending review of the ordinance.
This is on property, not
This is on property.
I'll second the motion. Johnson?
property. Okay. Part of ordinance. So that's Clayton and Johnson. Deb, do you want to explain a little bit further what's happening and what we discussed a little bit in the meeting?
We've discussed, well, I think initially we discussed the possibility of modifying the ordinance to grandfather in vehicles that are parked on the owner's property as of the date that the ordinance went into effect. So if you've got something parked on your property now, that's fine, it can stay there. I don't know if a variance or an exception would be another way to approach it. But we're trying to work with residents who may or may not have someplace else to put these vehicles. So the streets committee can discuss this at our next meeting.
Deb, this is only for RV, these type of devices on the property. This has nothing to do with the streets.
Absolutely,
No,
these are on property parking,
Only.
vehicles parked on property, not in a public right of way.
So it's
For
so
public allowed to speak at all about this?
yeah, literally, I assume you don't
I'm
sound like
just-
Brenda, but that's what it's.
My wife is Brenda Knopf is my wife. I'm Kurt Knopf. And I, for one, maybe many, got it's the ordinance chapter 530, section 41. And it's in November, and it says 2020. And it was a revision, I guess, ordinance for requirements for large vehicles on any streets or within municipality limits of the borough. And I mean, that's, I think, exactly the ordinance that you guys had talked about. I for one, got a letter because I have an RV parked on my property. I have 3 residences, and all of them, I mean, I understand if I can't, I have a Class A motorhome, and I understand if I can't park on the streets and stuff, but I think people like me, myself, I think it affects, I mean, keeping on our own property is one thing, but I can't keep it back far enough to the edge of the houses where it poses a problem for me. It sticks out from my house. It's not a blocking hazard or anything like that for traffic, for the roads are concerned, but it sticks out, and so I'm violating the ordinance. And I would be happy to try to, you know, dig up and build a driveway on the backside, but it's in the middle of winter, and then make it worse today. We got another storm, and so to be able to try to dig and be able to do that within the next 30 days of getting this, and it says I'm subject to $350 fine per day per occasion. So that's why I think that that's why I wanted to get on and at least say my opinion on it, and just explain what some residents may be going through, like myself. And I appreciate your time. Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt if I'm speaking out of the line or anything.
No,
No,
this is-
absolutely.
Thank you.
That's a
Right,
big
Tom.
help to us to get input from the community. And
Thank you.
this is why we would like to review the ordinance so that we can accommodate property owners who have personal property on their property.
Thank you.
So,
Can I speak to this issue if you don't mind?
Sure.
I think one of the things we have to take into account is back when some of us were growing up in Bellefonte, we didn't have these big mobile homes or campers or whatever you call them. You know, they were just small little campers. The times have changed. I think our ordinances have to reflect a time change as well. I think Mr. Spicer made a good point when he talked about more people own these now, and more people use them in the summertime, and we're close to a couple big RV places, one being Sayers Dam and so on and so forth. But I think we do have to take into consideration that we're not living in the 50s and 60s. There's new things going on, and we have to make allowances for those. I'm not against, obviously, the ordinance of them parking on the street, but we get into the issue now that we're telling people where and when they can't park it. These people are not parking in front of their house. It appears to me most of these situations that we've just heard about are that they protrude past the front of the house when they're parked on the side. So I would just ask the Streets Committee to take that into consideration of the changing times that we live in now, as opposed to back in the times when we had, 10-foot campers.
so
Thank you.
Mr. Spicer, the Streets Committee meets
That's not
Thursdays.
Mr. Spicer. That's
Oh,
not
Mr.
Mr.
Knopf.
Spicer.
Sorry.
That was the mayor talking.
Oh,
Now, the
okay.
gentleman that's speaking to council is not Mr. Spicer.
Sorry about that.
I just mentioned Mr. Spicer's letter.
Okay. I didn't catch your last name, but what I was going to say.
It's Knopf. I'm sorry if you were speaking. It's Kurt, K-U-R-T, Knopf, K-N-A-U-F-F. I'm on East High.
Okay. Mr. Knopf, the Streets Committee meets on Thursdays each week at noon. If you're interested in getting in on this discussion to give further information to the Streets Committee for updating this, please let Mr. Stewart know, and he can send you the Zoom link to do that.
What day is that?
It's Thursdays at noon every single week.
Yeah, okay, you just said every week.
Deb, you may want to remind Mr. Knopf that we're going to put this ordinance on hold until we
That's-
resolve this. So you are fine for now, and I think we're going to look favorable on your request.
So
We've talked
Thank
about it.
that's if we pass
preliminarily.
this motion, Doug, because we have to, because the
motion-
ordinance, the motion that Deb made was to put on hold the enforcement of the on-property portion of the RV ordinance until we review and revise that
Right.
portion of the ordinance. So that's what we're going to be voting on.
Okay,
Do we
let's
have
call
a
the
vote?
question.
So is there any other discussion? I just want to make sure everyone understood that.
I just want to add one thing, that when we talk about these ordinances, so we get a complaint or a couple complaints about whatever it might entail, we try to look at the whole ordinance. And I think that's what happened here. And then once we do the ordinance, it goes out for advertisement before it's approved. So somewhere along the line, maybe it doesn't seem like a lot of the residents who are in the situation you're in saw those, because I don't think there was any type of letters or input from the public after that advertisement. So maybe that's something we need to improve on.
Is the advertisement in the newspaper?
Yes, and also on our website.
Well, okay, two two vehicles that are not highly used any longer. I mean, I don't know that anybody goes to our website on a regular basis.
So it's also, I think we
Yeah,
have been trying
also
by
on-
practice to put it on our Facebook
Yeah,
page
I'm
as
sorry,
well.
Facebook page as well.
All right. Well, regardless, we have these issues to deal with now, and I'm sure we'll do a good job of making it fair for the people of our borough.
Okay.
That's our plan
Dave,
anyway.
are there any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor of suspending the enforcement of the on-property large vehicle RV restrictions until the Streets Committee can review and make proposed changes to that portion of the ordinance, leaving everything else in effect with the dates and everything, please say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. Next.
The next has to do with changes to the red meter parking primarily on North Allegheny Street. The meters are gone. It's now permit parking only. And we've had feedback from residents who are concerned about visitors who may not have a permit when they come to visit, and also competition with parking spaces, parking when parents come to pick up their children or drop them off at school. We're working with the residents to, I think one of the things we discussed was maybe for curtailing the permitted parking hours after 4 o'clock, to end the enforcement of that at 4 o'clock rather than 8 o'clock in the evening, to open it up a little bit. And also look into the possibility of doing a day permit if somebody had visitors coming in. It's kind of a complicated question to try and resolve people coming and going without intruding into people's personal lives. You know, before anybody could come and park on the street, as long as they fed the meter. Now we're asking them to basically notify the borough when they're going to be there. So we're working on solutions for that. I'm not quite sure where we're going with it. But that's something else the Streets Committee is working on.
I would just add to what Deb said. I think we have interest in going just Monday through Friday, say 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So there would be no enforcement in these areas on the weekends and of course after 4. So I think that would go a long way to help resolve this need for getting in there and like visitors coming in. Now during the day, Monday through Friday, we still would have some issues to work through.
Okay. Any questions on that? So this is another topic that we're meeting on a weekly basis until we can get it resolved.
Okay. And before I move on to the next item, I'd like to thank the public who have responded to both of these issues and given us some feedback, because it really helps us in determining what direction we go. It helps us to understand how to resolve their concerns. The next thing on the agenda is the policy and procedures for the personal delivery device operations. And in your packet are copies of the comments and questions that we forwarded to PennDOT prior to the deadline, so they could revise their operations draft manual. The new manual came out on Friday. I downloaded it, but not looked at the whole thing yet. I don't know how many changes were actually made. Given the feedback that we've had from, I think it was Ferguson Township, the MPO, a lot of their questions and concerns were very similar to the ones that we had. At this point, I don't believe there have been any requests to the borough for somebody to operate one of these devices. And we're just basically waiting for further information on it. So it's out there. They're probably coming at some point. We just don't know when.
Any questions on that? Do you have anything else, Deb?
Not today.
Okay, I have one thing to add. And and this will be on the agenda on Thursday. The PennDOT report on the Parkwood Lane flooding issues has come in, and we're going to review those comments at the Streets Committee meeting on Thursday.
Great.
Yeah, I would just add it's their stormwater reports and approval letter, I believe it is from DEP. So it's not really comments, it's just their reports and so on. But yes, we'll have the committee take a look at it and then go from there.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have.
Anything else? Okay, seeing nothing. Mike, it's your turn for energy and environment.
Well, the only thing I have is we have an update from the students doing the Talleyrand project. They're basically just getting started. They're learning their programs, and they're proposing dates for possible meetings. I don't know if you want me to rattle those off, but they just want to
That
know.
might be helpful for the public.
All right. Well, the meeting dates they're proposing are February 11th, 25th, March 11th, March 25th, April 8th, and April 22nd. And they say they're available between 4:15 and 5:30 on Thursdays. So kind of narrow windows, but I think they can be worked out.
Are they asking for every single one of these dates?
No, I think they're asking for. Well, I don't believe they are.
Well, I think they were trying to have a regular meeting, an every 2-week meeting.
Well, it looks like, yeah, I'm not sure if that's possible, but we can certainly give it some thought.
These virtual meetings?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Okay.
I can fill in a little bit. I was in contact with the lead student. What they're getting started on is they're going to use the Army Corps of Engineers stream modeling software to basically model the Big Spring area. So they're going to have they have a little bit of a challenge coming up to speed with using the software, but actually once they're done with it, probably could be something that if we ever had to get into stormwater modeling or anything like that, it would be the software you would have to use to handle that. So it's actually going to be a very good exercise for the students. I hope they'll be able to use it as they move on in their professional career. So great opportunity for them.
That's my entire report.
So, Mike, will you or Ralph get back to them about these meeting dates?
I can certainly work with everybody to do that.
Thank you, Ralph.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else? Seeing none. Ralph, Office of Community Affairs.
Okay. We do not have anything under the planning zoning section. We do have one HARB item for a certificate of appropriateness. It is for the extension of a fire escape on the rear portion of the building at 114 North Allegheny Street.
I would need a motion for approval.
I'll make the motion to approve the fire escape.
I'll second it.
Johnson and Clayton. Discussion? Go ahead, Deb.
I have a question, and there may be an obvious answer to this, but why is any wooden structure considered safe material for a fire escape?
I had the same question, Deb.
And especially since this fire escape goes down the back of the building to an enclosed area and then into a narrow alleyway before you get out onto, I think it's Pike Street, Pike Lane.
Mhm.
That seems like a really precarious arrangement.
I can answer. Let me just say this: the HARB looks at the aesthetics, and that's really the gist of the historic district ordinance. Beyond that, any property owner has to get a building permit and has to get a zoning approval. Those two items have to happen before anything is done.
Okay.
We do have a building inspector on the HARB. The issues you've raised, we're not the experts. I can't answer the yes or the no as to why. All I can tell you is I didn't hear of any red flags as to why it being wood. There was the only concern that was raised was crossing a property line, which is a zoning matter, and until that's addressed, they do not get zoning approval. But be assured, all their applications have to go through, get a building permit before they do anything. And they built this thing 4 or 5 years ago for the first building, the middle building, and the owner purchased the other building. So all he's doing is extending it maybe 5 feet to the next window. All I can tell you is that I don't think the code's changed much in 4 or 5 years. When he first built it, it does go down over a roof, and then it turns, and there's panning hardware on the gate. He doesn't want the public in there. He doesn't want people randomly going in that gate. So there's panic hardware on the inside so that if someone did use a fire escape, they could just hit the panic hardware and come out the door onto the alley. But all that is existing, was already approved by council, by the HARB 4 or 5 years ago, I think is what he said. It might be a little bit longer, but somewhere, since we updated the ordinance and created the criteria that you had to have 2 means of egress above the second floor. This person built a fire escape to accommodate that.
Yeah, well, I understand the need for a fire escape. I was just wondering why wood would be an approved material.
I think
Right.
I think if you look around Bellefonte, most of the fire escapes that have been built are wood. And I don't know if it has to do with the thickness of the wood, that maybe, steel melts as well if the conditions are right. So maybe wood is I don't know, it may not burn as quickly as, say, steel would melt as if it gets that hot.
Usually,
I don't know.
So
usually that's what it is. It's a fire rating, so much time to burn through. That's the best I can say to it.
maybe
Yeah, I
I
just
can
wondered
add
if
maybe I can add a little bit because I did attend the HARB meeting. Somebody did ask the question about how to protect the wooden fire escape. And what was pointed out is that if you looked in the pictures on the HARB thing, you could see this little thing right up at the top above the windows. And that when they heat up to a certain level, which is only caused by a fire, they automatically drop down over the windows to protect the fire escape from catching on fire from fires that are inside the building. So there's an additional protection that he said he was going to put in. However, my concern was slightly different, and Ralph mentioned it. And that's that this fire escape will be crossing property lines. The discussions, and HARB did say they were a little bit leery about approving a certificate of appropriateness, but because they were only supposed to look at the aesthetics, they went ahead and unanimously passed it, is that they could be sprinkling the building, or they could send this to the zoning review board for a waiver. I will only vote yes on the motion as presented because it doesn't have a conditional approval saying that these other steps have to happen before the certificate of approval is provided. So if someone wants to make an amendment for conditional approval to either deal with the sprinkling and or the wavering across two property lines or consolidation, however they want to work it out, I'm fine with that. But I'm just not comfortable personally with approving a certificate of appropriateness because as a council, we have to look at all of our ordinances to make sure that we make decisions based on the complete systems ordinances. HARB doesn't have to do that.
Okay. The historic district ordinance says nothing about crossing property lines.
That's what I just said.
But let me finish, please. There's no basis for that kind of condition. As I mentioned a few moments ago, zoning must sign off on this project. Before there's a sign off, there is either a fix in our regulations and our zoning that the zoning administrator looks at and says in their discretion, yes, this is a workable solution, or they go get a variance and then it's up to the zoning hearing board as to what happens. So that's how it's handled. And I said a minute ago, the building permit must be applied for. They cannot get the building permit until zoning signs off on that. So you do not have to put this condition on the certificate. It's already addressed in your other zoning or in your other ordinances. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Are you saying that you would not be writing the certificate of appropriateness until all these other steps have been made?
No, I can issue that. They can't do a thing with it. They can't build anything until they get the other permits. They have a certificate that says aesthetically, council approved it. That's all it is. The aesthetics can be changed. They must turn around and get a building permit. That certificate has no bearing, no weight whatsoever on them getting a building permit and the zoning officer signing off on the application.
And the zoning officer would be looking at the safety requirements.
The zoning officer is going to look at crossing the property line to see if there's anything in our zoning that permits that, such as an easement. We do have similar cases like for driveways, shared driveways, where it's documented if you cross a property line or you're sharing a property line with a shared driveway, it tells you what to do. If I want to review and see if there's anything. If there isn't, then the fix is they consolidate the properties, which they would have to do. But until anything happens, the certificate sits on the shelf. Nothing can be done until they find a solution. They could go to the zoning hearing board. They could consolidate the properties. But if they do nothing, the certificate sits on the shelf. And I would just add, the HARB recommended they look at the sprinkler system. That's all they did, because neighboring properties have done that.
You mean neighboring properties have looked at sprinklering?
Neighboring properties have put the sprinkler system in. The brownstone right across the street, the courthouse less than a block away is putting one in now.
So what they said in the HARB meeting was the guy, I think it was the architect that did the presentation. Yeah. He said that they had decided not to do the sprinkling because there wasn't enough pressure. It was at that point that Walt And somebody else on the thing came back and said that that was not true, that he should go back and look again at sprinkling because there is enough pressure. If the courthouse could do it and they're less than a half a block away in the same line, it's got the same pressure, they shouldn't have a problem in that building either.
That's correct. But I would just add, it was a long time ago when they did their calculations. I don't know who was involved, which professional engineer or that type of thing. But I do recall them, the owners, saying they didn't have enough water pressure. But as we said, right across the street, the Brownstone did it, and then the courthouse is doing it now. So that, again, the building inspector on Harb said, please go back and look at your numbers or have it rechecked because other properties found that there was enough pressure in that area.
And I don't know if just providing sprinklers takes the place of egress. I mean, I still think the egress is needed.
No, Randy, that's not what council approved this, and I can't tell you what year it was anymore. You had a choice. You either sprinkled the entire building or you had a second means of egress above the second floor. Some property owners put the sprinkler system in. Some properties put the fire escape in. Right across from Bishop Street, or the Catholic Church on Bishop Street, is a giant wooden fire escape. Plain as day.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in the historic district, but it's as plain as day, wooden. They didn't want to do the sprinkler system, obviously.
Other comments? Other concerns? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye.
Got it. That's all I have under the Harb report. Just as a note, as I said earlier in the meeting, we are in the process of filling the nuisance code position.
Okay, then moving on to special committee reports.
I just noted that I attended the Center County Tax Collection Committee meeting on the 28th. It's just more or less a reorganizational meeting and setting out some approvals for this upcoming year. They're down pretty much to meeting just once a year now.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Any old business?
I have a special committee report. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So this is the Nittany Valley Joint Planning Commission meeting that we had the third week of the third Thursday in January. So I'm going to run over this as quick as I can. I'm keeping it to Bellefonte related information, and Doug was at that meeting and he can jump in here anytime. But as far as the Nittany Valley Joint Planning Commission, we had formed an ad hoc committee last year to discuss firefighters and needs and things like that. And we're working with Walker Township, I'm trying to name these off the top of my head, Walker, Pleasant Gap, Bellefonte, and Howard fire companies, working with their chiefs and some members of the Nittany Valley ad hoc committee, which I'm part of that, got together and we started to develop a program. And we kind of worked on things like developing a list of different fire apparatus that are available through each one of these stations for mutual aid and things like that, which I think has already been done a couple times in the past. So basically where we're at right now is the last meeting we had was March of 2020. The last meeting we had in 2020 was in March. We just had a meeting in January. That was our first meeting since March. And at that time in March of 2020, we were looking at having a study done by DCED. And we needed all 5 members of Nittany Valley to sign in on that. And it took this long to get that final signature, get that final approval. So at this point, that's being moved now to, I believe, DCED for their approval and review. And so that's where we're at, waiting for that. We had an MPO update from Tom Zilla and Ann Mesner. MPO is to consider a tip amendment for Walker Township intersection at 64 and 550. The technical committee of MPO, working with volunteers, are develop a top 10 list of problem intersections to reduce accidents and serious injury. And Tom Zilla is working to get activity restarted for the feasibility study for Phoenix Avenue / Route 150. We had an update from Ms. Lose and Mr. Salinas of Center County, working on 2 plans, water implementation plan and hazard mitigation plan, hoping to incorporate both. On the mitigation plan, the Nittany Valley Committee approved adding hazardous mitigation plan chapter to our comprehensive plan. However, there seems to be some additional steps to complete this addition, and Ms. Lowe's and Mr. Salinas will review the best process to move this forward. So perhaps at our next meeting in March, we may have more information on that. And Spring Township reported that Myrtle Street from 550 to 150 will become a one-way street. I don't have a date. I don't remember them specifying a date when this will happen. I believe it's only going to allow right-hand turns onto 150, and all traffic turning left will need to go to the traffic light as they're coming toward Bellefonte. And that's how I understood it. And Doug, you have anything? I see it's shaking.
No,
his
very,
head.
very well done. The 64, what is that, 64 and 550 intersection?
Yes.
That's
Y and
going,
Zion.
yeah, that's going to start. I think it's ready to go right now. I mean, that they're anxious to get that going. That's going to be a major change there.
Is it going to be?
Major change for the good.
You
Are they
bet.
changing it to a T instead of a V?
That'll be an intersection, and it will come out at the bank. What's that bank there? They're moving the. What's the development there that John Curtin owns? There's a bank right there.
Jersey Shore State Bank, I think it is, Doug.
Okay, and there's a Dollar General around there, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
that they're creating an intersection there, so the Y will go away, and it's ready. They're ready to start now. But that was very good, Randy. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Anybody else have
I do have a special committees report. I'll make it brief. The Airport Authority.
Okay.
We had our organizational meeting the 28th of January. We elected our new officers. Our chair is Chris Groschel. I'm vice chair. Bob Finley's their secretary, and George. Now I forget his last name. Anyhow, we elected our officers. We do have some major projects coming up. Additional cameras, replacing west wall at the terminal, putting in a new air filter system in the HVAC, putting in a survey monument or 2. We bought a new hydraulic high flow snow thrower. And we're considering building a new storage building for our maintenance equipment. I have a meeting this week for that. The other thing is, as it is nationwide, our passenger employments are way down. For instance, in October of 19, we had a total of 20,825 employments. This year in October, we had 6,380. That's a 68.2% drop. It averages out about 70% drop in air travel. So like everything else, the air industry is struggling. Well, I think that completes. I was on the bylaws committee. We rewrote the bylaws, 3 of us. And we've submitted that to the authority for approval. It's been tentatively approved. We're making some minor corrections Should have that on the docket in the next 30 days. That completes my report. Any questions for the airport authority?
Just one real quickie.
Sure.
At your meeting, did you talk about the recent PFAS testing at the airport?
The what?
The PFAS. The
Not that I know of, no. I have no idea what it is.
PFAS is the chemicals that were used to spray on
De-icing?
de-icing and for fires on the airways. It's a toxic chemical. It's most often used in airports and some chemical plants. The only two places I know that it's being used in Center County is at the airport and at State of the Art across the street from the airport.
Ralph may be able to help me out on this if I can't answer it. I know that we do. Go ahead, Ralph.
There's a couple of things. I mean, the chemical is a new chemical, so to speak, on the radar, from an environmental perspective. There's two acronyms, PFAS and PFOS, but they're basically very similar chemicals, mostly associated with firefighting foam. And Eastern Pennsylvania has a site, a military, I think it's an Air Force site property that has a huge amount of contamination and has got into the groundwater there. And that has put this chemical or these chemicals on the radar for the nation. And US EPA is working on a standard, which there isn't any right now, as to what the contaminant level is and what to do about it. Until there's a regulation, we're up in the air as to what to do with it. But I can tell you, DEP probably 2 years ago went around and tested water sites and so on, and State of the Art was on one of the properties they looked at and found some. I think we're just waiting to figure out how to treat it, what to do with it, or what the regulation is before anything else happens.
The reason I asked is that John Lanning from Benner Township, which is where the airport is located, contacted both Ralph and me last week about several different things, and this is one of the things he mentioned. He did say that there had been some recent testing at the airport and at State of the Art, and they said that the numbers for the airport had gone down, which wasn't true or only slightly true for State of the Art, which is why I was asking if you knew anything more about it.
I do not, but I can certainly ask the question. I know that the airport does store the de-icing material in storage bins and hauls it off site when it's used.
Yes.
I don't know of any recent activities for fire, using it for fire treatments, whatever chemical is.
Yeah, the other thing that we commonly think of for this particular chemical is Teflon. It's got some PFAS in it.
Yeah.
Just,
I'll
if you could find out, I'd be interested.
Be glad to. That completes my they will be, they're planning a airport emergency plan. There was a meeting held Friday, the 22nd. Full-scale exercise is scheduled to happen sometime in May. So that should be coming up and more discussion about that. Maybe you know something about it, Randy. That's all I know.
No, there wasn't anything discussed at the fire exec meeting. So, but they could have training sometimes that might not come up. It's just between the chiefs and the firefighters. May have a plan for that. I'm sure they're usually involved in practice sessions up there and training. Basically, it's training sessions. I'm sorry.
That completes my report.
Thank you, guys. So now can we move on to old business?
I don't know. Do you have any more questions?
There- Do you have any more questions, Mike?
Not one.
Okay. Ralph, is there any old business?
I don't have any this evening.
Okay, then we'll move on to new business, and it's the going back to the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission certified local government grants. The agenda says we need to consider an application for funding for the train station roof and siding. I would like to have somebody make a motion to direct Don to prepare this grant application.
I'll make that motion.
Prendergast,
I'll second it. Clayton?
Prendergast and Clayton. Discussion?
Of course, they're going to want to know where the local match is going to come from and how much are we to ask for.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume you want us, in addition to the application, try to get some estimates on this type of project and then go from there.
Yep. And then bring it back to council so that we can say whether, because it'll probably come out of the bulk water.
Okay.
But Don has to get started on, so we have those estimates and have it in time for the next meeting so that we can send it off by March 1st. Because that's the deadline.
Okay.
Do we have any other discussion?
I'll make a mention that tomorrow I'm attending a
John,
township.
out of order. We need to vote on this motion first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about that. I thought we were done with that. Oh, sorry.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? So moved. Now go ahead, John.
Okay. So tomorrow I'm attending a webinar on how to frame noise ordinances. It was not necessarily saying that we need to have a noise ordinance, but it seemed like a good opportunity to pick up some information from the Township Association folks on effectively framing ordinances so that they can be productive and better yet, the police can actually enforce them. So hopefully we get some useful information out of it.
Which seems to be a problem with ours.
Okay. So you'll bring that back out, report at the next meeting.
Pardon me?
You'll bring
A
that
noise
back to
ordinance?
the next meeting? What information you got?
Yeah.
Okay, Doug, you
Yes,
had
I
your
will.
hand. Great.
Yep,
Doug, you had
I
your
will.
hand raised.
Back to that airport question. Who was the gentleman that spoke with you?
Jim Lanning. L-A-N-N-I.
Okay,
L-A-N-N-I.
he's in Benner Township.
Yes.
Does he know that they have a representative on the authority? Benner Township has a
Yes,
representative.
he just provided some information to me. I wanted more information. That was all I was asking.
Was he in touch with his township representative?
Yes,
Did he get a response?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I'll ask him. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other new business? Any other public comment? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Brackbill.
Second, Prendergast.
Brackbill and Pendergast? Seeing, I don't see any, is that saying you want to say something or just saying goodbye?
Seems the same thing.
Night, Sean.
Going out to find his other half of his snowblower.
Yeah. I'll buy the other half for $1.
You're muted, Mayor.
John.
Better that way.
So, okay. I don't see any objection to adjourning, so I guess we're adjourned, and it is 9:14 p.m.
Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
It's been
Bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Hey, Ralph,
Yes,
I had a very quick question about the financial interest forms.
yes.
Uh, I don't know if you can answer this question, but I have to fill this out because I'm a board member on my
Yeah.
daughter's and, the
Okay.
council position.
Right.
Do we list our stipend that we get as